This is a Wells-Gardner K7000 chassis from a 27-inch CRT that lives in Mortal Kombat 3 cabinet over at Rad Bar. I've already swapped out the vertical IC, which brought the monitor back to life, but the picture still looks washed out and dim. That means it's time for a cat kit. On top of that, the original Flyback transformer was cracked, so it's getting replaced too. In this video, I'll be giving you a quick look at the replacement process and going over the parts and kind of showing you what I'm using, giving you a quick idea of what it takes to keep an old arcade monitor up and running. Before we start, I want to point out I've already given this board a really thorough cleaning. I use simple green and a little bit of water to wash off all the grime and nicotine buildup over the years. Then I made sure the board was completely dried out. I've also removed the old Flyback transformer, so the chassis is ready for fresh parts. All the parts I'm using today came from arcadepartsandrepair.com. I'll have a link down in the description. Basically, I'm using this full cat kit and a new Flyback transformer so we can get installed and get this thing running away like it should. You could source the capacitors individually. If you're doing a lot of these and you want to save a few bucks, that's probably the best way to go. But honestly, for a one-off repair or just to keep your sanity about you, these kits are definitely the way to go. They're not that expensive. Everything's labeled. It comes with a how-to guide and sort of an inventory of all the kits. It really saves you some time. For most of this video, I'll be showing you a picture that identifies all the capacitors that we're going to change on this board to kind of make it easy to follow along as we go. The process is pretty straightforward. The biggest gotcha here is that most of these capacitors, except for these down here, most of these capacitors are polarized. So they're marked with the negative sign. And most of the time on the board, it's marked which side's negative, which side's positive as well. So you want to pay attention to make sure that you get that right when you're changing out these capacitors. You definitely want to make sure that when you're swapping the capacitors, the one that's coming out, you need to make sure that the size of the capacitor, so basically not the voltage, but the other number, which is farads, it's measured in farads, capacitance is. So this capacitor, for instance, is a 25 volt 100 microfarad capacitor. So we want to make sure that the capacitance is always the same. The voltage can be higher. Like I could definitely swap in this is a 1000 microfarad. I could definitely swap in a 1000 microfarad 50 volt. So you can go larger on the voltage, not smaller, but the capacitance needs to remain the same. That's another good thing about these kits is that they're basically spec'd to have exactly what you need to put in there. And if there's any sort of difference between what's in there and what came in the kit, it will mention that to you. These ones in the kit that are marked BP, those are bipolar, which means they don't have a direction. That's going to be easy. Capacitor C50, the glue had actually covered the polarity marking. I could just barely make it out, but I figure I'll make it easy for the next person that comes behind me. And that's something I should point out is, most of the work done at Rad Bar is done by Joe. And, if he has to come back and do this in several years because, these things fail, they're prone to fail. I want to make sure that I leave good quality work and something easy for him to follow so that he's not wondering what the heck it was I was doing when I was in here. So make sure you take your time, leave yourself notes for the future. It'll really pay dividends. Now that the cat kit is all installed and all of our capacitors are sitting in there quite nicely, we're going to move on to the flyback. So the flyback transformer, if you're not familiar, it's basically what it does is it generates the high voltage to power our CRT, so the tube, and it also controls brightness and focus to the gun going to the tube. So without it, there's no picture. Like this does all the powering for the actual tube itself. They can crack, which this one has. This one has a pretty ugly crack in it. Or they can start to arc out, like it breaks down, this plastic breaks down over time. And because it sits right here, it can arc out to this plate and things like that. A lot of times when you see them running, you'll see arcing to this plate and you'll know it's time for a new flyback. But here's our replacement. The thicker line here is your focus line, and that will go into this connection here on the neck board. The other line, the smaller diameter line, goes to the original ones had connectors like this. So what I usually end up doing is cutting this connector off and splicing it in line, and it plugs into this point right here on the neck board as well, that pin. So I'm going to cut this off, splice it in. Just, I don't like dealing with the key in there. Splicing it will be fine. And then we'll get this installed. When installing it, see kind of all the pins back there. When installing it, it goes in this horseshoe right here. You want to make sure that it sits nice and flush on the board. You don't want any wiggle movement, anything like that. But basically it's just sliding it in. There are little clips that can go into these three slots here. Kind of see them. There's clips on the legs there, and it should seat into place and it should sit down nice and flush. So we've got it seated. All of our pins came through. These tabs were holding me up. I needed to kind of rock them a little bit with a screwdriver. But now they're seated in, holding everything nice and flush. And we can apply some solder here. I also removed this capacitor down here. C42 it is. It sits right down here. I can get that back in there now that this is seated. Yeah, just nice to have it out of the way. To splice these together, I'm going to solder this connection and slide the heat shrink over. Right, and that has it for this main board here. The last thing I like to do is just go through and inspect everything, make sure that I didn't damage anything when I was putting things together, make sure I didn't miss anything. The top part of the board looks pretty good. Everywhere there was components before, there's still components. The bottom side is where you really want to pay close attention. You want to make sure all your solder joints are clean. You don't want to have any cold joints or anything like that. The neckboard connections, these blue lines, one disconnects from the main board, one disconnects from the neckboard. Just reinstall those. This ground line connects here to the chassis. It's a bolt and nut connection. The line that we just spliced goes into the pin on the neck board, and your focus wire This connection's kind of interesting. See if I can sort of show you what's happening. The side of it has a bail that flips up here. There's a locking mechanism here. The focus wire itself, it just needs to seat in here, straight down. You'll feel it kind of engage. And then this clip just holds it in place. It sort of presses it and holds it in place. And then there's a loop right here for a strain relief. Put that right there so it doesn't pull on this connection. And that's it. We'll have to do some cable management when we get everything installed, but we'll do that once we're at the CRT. So that's a full cap kit and flyback replacement on a Wells-Gardner K7000 chassis. This will be going back into Mortal Kombat 3 at Rad Bar, and I'll have a follow-up video once Joe has some time and we can get it set up and installed, and I'll try to capture some of that for you guys in a future video. This one was a little different from the channel. I only touched lightly on the process here. If you'd like to see me go into more detail on monitor repair or restoration of arcade type stuff, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If this is something that doesn't really interest you and you want to get back to consoles and handhelds, let me know that too. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss the follow-up, and thanks for watching.